Alright, so today we're going to talk about how to fit all of this stuff into one of these so it looks like this. So on a backpacking trip, there's a lot of gear that you need to carry with you to be comfortable and to be safe. So let's take a look at how you would fit all of this gear into a backpack so that it doesn't throw off your balance or cause any problems. For this particular trip, I'm going to be bringing with a tent, sleeping pad, the sleeping bag, I've got an extra tarp just in case, replacement cold weather clothes, some paracord, cook kit, a hammock, my food and toiletries, bathroom kit, water bottle, something else to drink out of, headlamp, a compass, there's also a fire steel in there, battery pack so I can keep you guys along with me, and a first aid kit. Let's take a second here and just talk about organization of gear. All of this stuff is pretty small and could easily shift in the backpack and make it hard to find, it could get damaged, or it could throw you off balance when you're on the trail. One of the most important things here is that we're able to organize it all into small stuff sacks, which is what they're sitting on. That way, we know where they are, they stay together, and more importantly, you can really get them packed in a way that won't throw you off balance and it'll keep you safe on the trail. First thing that we're going to do is get all of these stuff sacks filled and organized with all of the gear. Alright, so now that we've gotten all of the gear organized into the different stuff sacks, we're going to go ahead and put those to the side because they're not going to go into the pack until much later. But we also didn't want all of that gear rolling around and getting in the way of everything else. In each of these bags, I went on ahead and tried to organize it in a way that makes sense. So all of my food, toiletries are all in here. This is all the stuff that smells interesting to wildlife. This is the bag that I will try and get away from my campsite once I get there to make sure that nothing is interfering with me, and usually I'll put it up in a tree someplace so that hopefully nothing gets into my food either. This one again, it just has all of my paracord in it. The hammock. This has all of my cookware in it and plate, everything that I might need for that. And then this one is kind of a unique bag. This is called a dry bag, and the idea here is that it's waterproof. I put everything in here that I really do not or cannot afford to get wet while I'm out there. In other words, if I fall into a puddle, this has clothes that I can change into that are nice and dry. It also has all of my extra batteries and everything else that I just really want to make sure stays dry. This particular one is from a paddle gear shop, and so if you're having trouble finding dry bags, definitely go look where they have water sports. All of the kayaks, canoes, all of that stuff, they have a ton of different sizes as well as shapes of these bags. So very handy, definitely would recommend that for keeping things dry. Now this is the only piece of cookware that I did not put into the stuff sack, and that's because it's so thin that I have a better idea on where I'm going to store it. We'll talk about that later. Now these other odds and ends, these are things that are going to be needed on the trail, and so I don't want to bury them in a stuff sack and have them in my pack where they're not accessible. All of this stuff will end up going into pouches and pockets that are on the backpack itself right at the end. Now the next thing that we're going to talk about is the sleeping bag. Obviously we cannot put this giant thing into the backpack how it is now, so I'm going to go on ahead and get that put into the stuff sack so that it's ready to go. So one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is how to get one of these down sleeping bags into the stuff sack, especially when you're looking at trying to backpack where you really want to get into a small package and be able to fit a lot of other gear with it. One of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they think that you have to roll up the bag like you would one of your childhood sleeping bags. And down sleeping bags are not designed for that. They call this a stuff sack for a reason. Instead of rolling it, which would actually damage the down, you literally take handfuls of the material and you stuff it into the bag and you work your way in a circle as you go up so that it evenly fills the whole bag. It's going to look something like this. Get your first big handful, start at the feet so that the air has a way to get out through the hood, and just shove it right into the bottom at one end. Then grab another handful and just work your way around the bag. And it's not real scientific. If you feel a spot that doesn't have as much material, you just tuck a little bit more into that spot. But again, trying to keep it as even as possible all the way around. The best part about this is because every time you do it, it'll be a little bit different. The sleeping bag and the down doesn't form a memory, causing it to lose its loft, or that fluff that keeps you warm. So now that we've got it all into the bag, just going to take the flap, put it right over the top, and cinch it down. And then one extra step that I take, because I do not like having all of these cords, is a simple overhand slip knot that gets it into a nice small package. And that's all it takes to get that entire sleeping bag into a stuff sack. Alright, so this is starting to look a lot more manageable as far as being able to fit it into that pack, but there's still one more bit of prep work that we need to address, and that is going to be the tent. Now, I've seen people carry tents in a lot of different ways. Some of them will strap them to the bottom or stick it on the side, and the problem is that this is a really dense thing. It's pretty heavy and it's an awkward shape, and so we want to try and distribute that weight throughout the pack. That way it's balanced and it doesn't pull us in any direction. How we do that is we go on ahead and take everything out of the stuff sack, because really this is more for car camping or for storage. It's not for backpacking. And now we've got our separate pieces. So we've got our poles, which we'll set those to the side because that is again going to be one of those last things that we put in the pack. And then we've got our rain fly and the tent itself. And now that we have everything out of the pack and out of the stuff sack, it's ready to get packed into the backpack itself. Alright, so we've got all of the prep work done. Now it's time to start putting everything into the backpack itself. First thing you want to do is make sure that all of these compression straps are nice and loose. That way you can fit everything into all of the little spaces. Looks like everything's pretty loose. Next, we'll go on ahead and get this opened up. And you can see just how giant of a space that is. That is why we really want to make sure that we're careful in how we load it and that we have little bags and stuff sacks to organize the gear. Because if you were just ruffling through this entire thing the whole time, it'd be really difficult to find things. So, first thing that's going to go in there is going to be your sleeping bag. The reason for that is it is a really big, bulky item, but it's not very heavy. So by putting it in the bottom of the bag, it won't throw off your balance, and it'll also fill some of that awkward space and gives us a good foundation to build up off of. And when I put this into the bag, I am going to have it in sideways and compress it down. Okay, so now that I have that in there, we're going to start putting in the tent itself. Now it doesn't really matter if you start with the fly or the body of the tent, so long as they both end up in there. And I just like to fold it in half one more time. And then I'm going to set this down in there and then tuck the sides in around the backpack, or around the sleeping bag. Okay, going to copy the same thing for the rain fly, fold it in half. And get it tucked into all those little gaps. Next up, I'm going to put in our grill that we made. This one, because it's so thin and it's relatively heavy, I want to try and keep that as close to my back as possible. If I put it all the way on the outside of the pack, then when I turn, this is going to try and pull me off balance. So we want this to be really close, preferably right in between the shoulder blades, which is exactly what the hydration pouch was made for. So now we start to get to a point where we really need to hold everything and see how heavy it is and where it should go in the pack. So we've still got our tarp, sleeping pad, our cookware. The food I'm going to save towards later because I still have some more stuff to put in there, and I also want to be able to access my snacks. Our paracord, hammock, and clothes. So just by moving things around, I can tell that this one actually has quite a bit of weight to it because it has those battery packs and all those clothes in it. So I'm going to try and keep this tied in with me as well. Right up along that back panel. Then the sleeping pad and the tarp, those are really light items. Those I can put towards the outside, and they shouldn't really do much as far as make me fight to turn and twist and maneuver on the trail. So we're going to put those in next to fill in that space farther away. Now, next up, the hammock, again, is really dense. This is something that's pretty heavy for its size. So we want that to be up close to our spine. And it'll actually go right next to the food, which is going to be equally heavy. Our cookware is actually very light, kind of bulky, but again, it can go on the outside and not cause too many problems. Now this I'm going to go on ahead and cinch up, and I always like to try and keep all of this extra cord out of the way. So what you do is you just do an overhand knot or a slip knot here, and then pull out the slack, and that'll make it really easy to untie later and also to keep things all nice and tight. Now let's start talking about all of the pockets and things. We can strap this down. Get our lid pulled over the top. And right in the front here we have a good sized pouch. This is where I'm going to go on ahead and put my paracord. My first aid kit, and my bathroom kit. And now we'll get everything put into the top here. And this, I really don't want to put a lot of stuff in, but there's a few things that I want to have access to. Here's one of my battery packs, that way I can keep you guys along with me on the trail. I've got my compass as well as a magnesium fire starter in there. It's always a good idea to have more than one way to start a fire. And my headlamp. This is something that every now and then you're hiking longer than you think that you're going to need to, and it comes in real handy to be able to have that light source and have your hands free. So that'll go in there as well. Now the next step is going to be to take care of the tent poles. These poles, again, are a really awkward shape. It's something that if you try and fit into the bag, it's difficult to work other things around it. But on the outside of the pack, you can put it right along the side into one of the water bottle holders. And then when you tighten down all of your compression straps, it'll hold it in place and you won't have any problems with it. Then on the other side, we'll go on ahead and put in another water bottle. Get some of the slack out of these. And then this cup, wonderful thing about having that carabiner is I can pretty much hook it on anywhere. I tend to have it right about there. So now that everything is in the bag, you can see that it's pretty thick. And we want to try and get everything compressed down as close to your back as possible, again, to keep that balance and keep your center of gravity where you want it. So if you take the bag, lay it down, and just sit on it, knee on it, and just start wrenching on all of these straps. And I like to do it just in circles, kind of working my way around the bag. That way things end up looking nice and even. And now it's all cinched up. Now you can go ahead and get the pack put on and get ready for your adventure.